Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. On today's show, code name Hurricane Crossfire, the secret origin story of the Trump investigation. That is very interesting. How we got into this mess that we are currently in today. New documents released about the Trump Tower meeting. What do they show? Do Gazans possibly have the right to invade Israel? And we have two great stories about how Donald Trump is incredibly stupid. Alright, yeah, so that's our show for you today. We hope you will like it, and think that you will like it as well. So there is going to be lots of to get to here as always. Sorry, my microphone is just so loud there. Yeah, but still, we do have a good show for you today. Anyway, yeah, as we know, within hours of the beginning of Trump's Russia investigation, FBI agents were headed to Australia to meet with the Australian ambassador to find out whether he had evidence of possibly of these possible Trump aides, knowing about Russian interference ahead of time. It turns out the Trump aide was George Papadopoulos, and the case was eventually handed off to the special counsel as we now know it today. The fact that the Trump and the FBI investigation was present throughout of the 2016 election year may have devastated the Trump campaign if it was ever revealed publicly. And to be honest, it really probably should have been shared. I mean, it was a pretty interesting investigation here. Just to give you the details, their assignment, which had not been previously reported, was, again, to meet with the Australian ambassador, New York Times says, who has evidence that one of Donald Trump's advisors knew in advance about Russian election meddling. After 10 celebrations broke out between Washington and Canberra, top Australian officials broke with the diplomatic protocol and allowed the ambassador to sit down with the FBI to describe his meeting with campaign advisor George Papadopoulos. So the report helped provide the foundation for a case that a year ago Thursday became the special counsel investigation. But at the time, a small group, a very small group of people in the FBI knew it by one code name, Crossfire Hurricane. And it's born from a Rolling Stones lyric, which is, I was born in a Crossfire Hurricane, and it was pretty much a representative feature of the storm that was set to blow over the Bureau that is still blowing over the Bureau at this moment as we speak here today. And the thing is, the fact that the Trump FBI investigation was present and was going on may have really hurt the campaign, and it probably should have been shared. The Clinton probe, on the other hand, that was going on was much more transparent. And the Trump people, versus when you compare that to the Trump probe, which no leaks came out of, the FBI seemed to think Clinton would beat Trump, and they were afraid of being accused of rigging the election in her favor. They were seen as being too nice to her. That's what they were worried about. They were seen as being way too nice to her in the future, and they just did not want to be involved in that at all whatsoever. So yeah, now the FBI is, that's what their kind of calculation was. I mean, the Inspector General of the Justice Department is going to release the findings of the lengthy review of the FBI's conduct in the Clinton case, which is very sketchy. The results are certain to renew debate over the decisions by FBI Director at the time, James Comey, to publicly chastise Clinton in a news conference and then announce the reopening of the investigation days before the election. So Clinton said these actions buried her presidential hopes, which, I mean, sure, they did not help, but you're missing the broader point here, woman. That's all I'm going to say. Those decisions stand in contrast to the FBI's handling of a Crossfire Hurricane, because not only did agents in that case fall back to their typical policy of silence, but interviews with a dozen current and former agents and officials and a review of documents show that the FBI was even more circumspect in that case than has been previously known. Many of the officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the investigation publicly. Agents did not even want to be interviewing Trump associates, which may have sped up the investigation, maybe risked revealing the existence of the leaks. Top officials became convinced that they would not solve the case before the election day, which made them only more hesitant to act. When agents did take bold investigative steps, like interviewing the ambassador, they were shrouded in secrecy. No one really knew about them. The whole point of the situation here was to do the best possible to keep things quiet. They wanted to shut down the show here, and it was very, very important that none of this really gets out. So, so fearful of leaks, they kept details from political appointees across the street of the Justice Department. Peter Strzok, a senior FBI agent, explained in a text that this department official would find it too tasty to resist sharing. I'm not worried about our side, he wrote, but Justice Department may be a little bit problematic. Only about 5 Justice Department officials knew the full scope of the case, not the dozen or more who might normally briefed on such a major national security situation here. So they just feared leaks. The facts they surfaced might have devastated the Trump campaign, and that's the thing, because Trump's future national security advisor was under investigation, as was his campaign chairman, and one advisor appeared to have Russian intelligence contacts. Another was suspected of himself being a Russian agent, and I'm guessing that's going to be Carter Page. But in the Clinton case, however, Comey has erred on the side of transparency. But in the face of questions from Congress about the Trump campaign, the FBI declined to tip its hand. And when the New York Times tried, when the New York Times tried to assess the state of the investigation in October 2016, law enforcement officials cautioned against drawing any conclusions, resulting in a story that significantly played down the case. Which, as you may know, it's if you're on Twitter and you follow political people on Twitter, it's the story. It's the exact story you're thinking of. It's a story titled "Investigating Donald Trump. FBI sees no clear link to Russia." So. Yeah, so that's the thing. That's the thing we now know that has been incredibly mocked, and really at this point kind of comes off as stupid because really it was. But then again, the point is there. The takeaway from that is, for me, like, look how secretive they try to keep this for Donald Trump and the benefit of him. Not really for the benefit of him, but for the exercise of overly covering their own asses. So, I mean, they didn't want to look like they were trying to help Trump in any way, because then they would have been like, yo, bruh, like, what are you doing? What are you doing, bruh? Come on, bruh. This is not right. This is what the Trump conservative people would be saying. Why are you going too hard on you? You're going too hard on and getting up in the face of the FBI because they don't care. And they try to appease them. But, as James Comey now knows, you can never, ever appease conservatives. That's just pretty much how it works. So, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so the FBI seemed to think Clinton would beat Trump, and they were afraid of being accused of rigging the election in her favor. Now they're being seen as nice to her from the Trump campaign. But here's the thing: now the FBI is being accused of bias against Trump, and they drummed up the Russia probe to hurt him, and that's just the thing that they're being accused of at this very moment. Even after they tried to tamp it down significantly. And here's the key lesson to take from this. It never, ever, 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 ever works to appease the right wing. Never works. So that's what you should take into account for this. That's pretty much all of it. Anyway. Yeah, so now we turn our attention to documents. Documents show promise and letdown around the Trump Tower meeting, newly released. by the New York Times. We all know the gist of the Trump Tower meetings. Trump Jr. went to Russia with Kushner, Manafort, and others for dirt, and he pretty much got nothing. But there are new events and revelations from the Trump Tower article. Some Trump Tower documents. Here's some among the revelations. 6 months after the Trump Tower meeting, an intermediary contacted Donald Trump Jr.'s office asking for a follow-up. The newly released document showed the intermediary, Rob Goldstone, told the committee he proposed a second meeting between the lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya and members of Trump's team in November 2016. He said he contacted Trump's longtime executive assistant at the behest of R.S. Agarilov, a Russia-based billionaire who knows Putin. But that second session never took place. The invitation shows the terminations of the Russians with close connections to convince the Trump team that the Magnitsky Act, which imposed sanctions on the host of Russian officials for human rights abuses, was a mistake. The 2012 law, which froze bank accounts of some of Russian officials and barred them from entering the United States, infuriated Putin. In late 2016, Trump's assistant, again, that's Goldstone, in an email to Trump's assistant, Goldstone, a British music promoter, attached a 3-page document marked confidential and called for the launch of congressional investigation into the circumstances of the passing of the Magnitsky Act. He wrote that Agarilov hoped the document would be delivered to the appropriate team. Ms. Veselnitskaya also said came out against the law in the June meeting as well. So they pretty much tried to do everything they possibly could to try and filter this stuff into the Trump administration, which is a little bit dangerous, but still, yeah, you don't really like to see it. The transcripts also highlight how lawyers for the Trump administration tried to manage the fallout by coordinating the statements of Goldstone and others. So, in the testimony, Donald Trump Jr. acknowledged that his father may have helped draft the statement that he put out to the press after the meeting became public, but he said that they had not discussed the meeting when it happened. But on a number of other questions, he drew a blank, including whether his father uses a blocked phone. Phone records show that Donald Trump Jr. called a blocked number before, and after calls with Agalov's son Amin arranging the meeting, and again on the night of the meeting. So phones show that he called a blocked number. So that very well could have been Donald Trump. So that's probably why they're asking whether or not his father used a blocked phone number. And my guess, just sensibly, would be yes. So, yeah. He gave the same answer when asked if the initial offer of documents, I don't know answer, the initial offer of documents and information the initial offer of documents and information that would incriminate Clinton had alarmed him. I don't know that it alarmed me, but I said, I don't know, and I don't know that I was all that focused on it at that time. So that's his take there on the matter, which is interesting. Whatever Trump expected for the meeting, his colleagues and him were roundly let down. Goldstone expected to see Veselnitskaya deliver the smoking gun, and he testified that on his way out of the door. He told Trump this was hugely embarrassing. So that's what we said. It was like, "I'm sorry, bud. This is embarrassing. I'll make it up to you," that kind of thing. So the committee released a single page of notes that Manafort took during the meeting. They consisted of a cryptic list of 11 topics, including an incomplete word, illicit, which I'm assuming is illicit. And Manafort also noted offshore, Cyprus, 133 million shares, companies not invest, dash loan, and active sponsors of RNC. Veselnitskaya appeared unhappy that her message was falling on deaf ears. I knew she was expecting something from the meeting, something bigger. So it looks kind of like they kind of lured them into that there as well, which is unfortunate. So,